Boom, nobody saw this coming. Number 4 Texas just walked into a heavyweight showdown with number 5 Vanderbilt, and walked out with a loss that sent shockwaves through women's college basketball. The crowd was stunned. The players were frustrated. And when Vic Schaefer stepped to that podium, you already knew this wasn't going to be your typical "we'll get better" press conference. This was accountability. This was fire. This was a top 5 reality check. Tonight, we're breaking down everything from the Texas Longhorns women's basketball collapse, how the Vanderbilt Commodores women's basketball flipped the script, and why Coach Schaefer's message might actually be more dangerous for the rest of the country than if Texas had won. Was this just one bad night? Or did Vanderbilt expose something bigger? Trust me, you're going to want to hear what was said behind that podium. Before we dive in, make sure you smash the like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss any elite women's hoops coverage, and drop a comment right now. Is Texas Final Four team after this loss? Or did Vanderbilt just change the national title picture? Let's get in. When the final buzzer sounded and the scoreboard confirmed it, number 4 Texas had fallen to number 5 Vanderbilt. The energy inside the arena shifted from confidence to confrontation. Not confrontation with the opponent. Confrontation with themselves. Moments later, Vic Schaefer stepped to the podium. No smile. No excuses. Just honesty. The head coach of the Texas Longhorns women's basketball didn't need long to summarize what had just happened. Vanderbilt had been tougher. Sharper. More disciplined. And in a top 5 matchup where margins are razor thin, that was enough. Across the floor, the Vanderbilt Commodores women's basketball had just earned a statement victory, one built on composure, defensive grit, and timely shot-making. For Texas, it was a humbling night. And Vic Schaefer doesn't run from humbling nights. He opened by giving Vanderbilt full credit. He praised their physicality, their defensive rotations, and their poise in late-game possessions. He emphasized that they controlled the glass in key stretches and converted second-chance opportunities when Texas needed stops the most. But then the tone "We didn't defend at a championship level," he said. For anyone who knows Schaefer's coaching DNA, that sentence says everything. Defense is not just a philosophy in his program, it is the identity. Help side rotations. Communication. Closeouts with discipline. Rebounding with authority. It's what separates contenders from pretenders. And on this night, Texas fell short of that standard. Vanderbilt's guards attacked downhill, forcing Texas into scrambling help situations. There were moments where rotations were a half-step late. Closeouts were short. Boxouts were lost in traffic. In a matchup between two elite teams, those half-steps become full possessions, and those possessions Schaefer pointed out that the difference wasn't effort, it was consistency. That distinction matters. Effort shows up in spurts. Consistency wins championships. Texas had defensive stretches where they locked in and strung together stops. But those stretches didn't last long enough. Vanderbilt answered runs with composure. They didn't panic when Texas made pushes. They stayed disciplined within their Offensively, Texas had its own struggles. There were possessions where the ball stuck. Instead of crisp reversals and paint touches, the offense stalled into isolation plays late in the shot clock. Schaefer emphasized that when his team is at its best, they attack inside out, collapsing defenses and kicking to shooters in rhythm. That rhythm wasn't sustained. Vanderbilt disrupted passing lanes. They pressured ball handlers. They forced Texas to initiate offense further from the rim than they prefer. And in key moments, Texas settled for contested jumpers instead of forcing the issue at the rim. Schaefer didn't raise his voice in the press conference. He didn't need to. The disappointment was controlled, the kind that burns quietly and motivates loudly. He was asked about leadership. His answer was telling. He challenged his veterans to be more vocal, more assertive, more demanding of excellence in real time. Leadership, in his view, isn't something that happens in film sessions after a loss. It happens on the floor when adversity strikes. There were moments in the second half when Texas cut the deficit and seemed poised to seize momentum. But each time, Vanderbilt responded. A timely three. A putback. A forced turnover. Championship-caliber teams deliver counters. And on this night, Vanderbilt had more counters. Schaefer acknowledged that late-game execution must improve. Situational awareness. Foul management. Shot selection. Defensive matchups. He broke down specific sequences where communication broke down, small details that tell tight games. He also reminded everyone in the room that February losses can be gifts if they're handled correctly. Texas remains a national contender. One loss to a top 5 opponent does not dismantle a season. But it does provide film. It exposes tendencies. It highlights cracks that can be sealed before March. Schaefer's message to his locker room was clear: own it. No pointing fingers. No blaming officiating. No blaming schedule fatigue. Own it. He spoke about competitive pride. About how elite programs respond. Historically, his teams have answered losses with physical practices and focused corrections. He hinted that the upcoming practices would be sharp. Not punishment. He described Vanderbilt as older in key spots and praised their decision-making in crunch time. Experience matters in games like this. So does There was also a deeper undercurrent in the press conference: urgency without panic. Schaefer knows the SEC gauntlet leaves no room for emotional hangovers. Another elite opponent waits. The margin for error in conference play is thin. Every possession becomes a data point for selection committees and seeding. But beyond rankings, he cares about habit. Habits win in March. He reiterated that Texas must re-establish its defensive edge. That edge has carried programs to Final Fours under his leadership before. It's non-negotiable. He also highlighted the need for stronger starts. Falling behind early forces teams to expend extra energy climbing uphill. Against disciplined teams like Vanderbilt, climbing uphill drains legs and narrows offensive creativity. Conditioning wasn't the issue. Focus was. The press conference stretched beyond surface-level cliches. Schaefer dissected rebounding numbers, turnover margins, and paint points allowed. He circled back repeatedly to toughness, not emotional toughness, but physical and mental discipline over 40 minutes. When asked whether this loss shakes confidence, he didn't hesitate. No. Because confidence, in his program, isn't built on being undefeated. It's built on response. He spoke about past teams that stumbled mid-season and sharpened into postseason threats. He reminded everyone that growth rarely happens in And then he leaned forward slightly and said something that felt less like an answer and more like a warning to future opponents. We'll get better from this. That wasn't bravado. It was conviction. Vanderbilt celebrated a signature win, and deservedly so. They executed. They defended. They controlled critical stretches. In top 5 showdowns, that's the formula. But Texas walked away with something too: clarity about where rotations lagged. Where communication dipped. Where offensive patience faltered. Those are fixable elements. Effort isn't the problem. Identity isn't lost. It just needs sharpening. In the locker room, according to Schaefer, the mood wasn't despair. It was accountability. Players were already discussing adjustments. Already replaying possessions in their mind. That's what elite culture looks like after a loss. The broader college basketball landscape will analyze this game as a statement for Vanderbilt and a stumble for Texas. Analysts will debate seeding implications. Fans will dissect every possession online. But inside the Texas program, the narrative is simpler. One night exposed weaknesses. Now the work begins. Schaefer closed the press conference by thanking the fans who traveled and acknowledging their support. He promised a response worthy of the jersey. Then he stood, nodded, and walked away, already thinking about the next practice. Because in his world, losses are not ending. They're ignition point. And if history is any indicator, this ignition could light something dangerous heading into March. And just like that, the message has been sent. Number 4 Texas got punched in the mouth by number 5 Vanderbilt, and now the entire country is watching to see how Vic Schaefer and the Texas Longhorns women's basketball respond. Because here's the truth: great teams aren't defined by wins. They're defined by what they do after losses like this. Vanderbilt earned that statement. The Vanderbilt Commodores women's basketball proved they belong in the national championship conversation. But if you know anything about Vic Schaefer coach teams, you know this: they don't stay down. This loss? It might be this. Now I want to hear from you. Is Texas still a Final Four lock? Did Vanderbilt just shift the power balance? Or are we headed toward a rematch with everything on the line? Drop your takes in the comments. Let's debate. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe for non-stop elite women's basketball coverage, and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown. We're just getting started. See you in the next one.